Hi guys, this is Cesar Castro. Today I am going to go over a LinkedIn chatbot that I created, and this chatbot came out of a conversation that I had with a couple of friends of mine, which were dealing with recruiters. And after a conversation, they would submit their resumes, and after that, it's kind of a black hole. They would never hear back from the recruiters, and it was pretty upsetting for them. So I decided to just generate this workflow. It took about 6 hours for me, just testing and configurations with Unipile, which was brand new to me. But all of the use cases seem to be working out okay with the prompt that I'm using. I just want to go over that, and anybody can use this template. I'm posting it for download. The user story that we're dealing with is as a talent recruiter, I need a reliable automated system to classify and respond to incoming messages from candidates. This will help me provide faster, more consistent responses, which builds stronger relationships with talent and decreases my workload. So we're looking at this from the perspective of a talent recruiter. Obviously, there's so many more benefits to the interaction that's happening between the recruiter and the talent they're trying to recruit. And within this particular use story, I have 5 different scenarios that I'm dealing with in the conversation. The first one is when a candidate submits a resume, a message needs to go out acknowledging the submission. If there's a request for an update, such as how's that recruiting for the job happening. Another path that this can take is a request for additional information about the job. What's the salary? What are the days? What's the location? Who's the company? And so on. Those are just general questions that we really don't have an agent to handle. It needs to come from the talent recruiter. And there's that use case where a job number in reference back to a job submission. This is a candidate requesting an update on a job that was shared with them, and they're asking for an update on it. And they do have a reference number that we can look back into and provide a status, or at least check into the status of that particular job description. And then there's the option, the catch-all of a don't reply. And these are informal, ambiguous, conversational aspects of the chat. We really don't want to interact with that. We're just going to leave it alone. Part of this user story is we want to make sure that we are working with people that are actually in our leads list. And these are candidates that we extracted or matched to a job description and we are interacting with. If it's just a random person or if it's a different entity, not necessarily dealing with job applications, we don't really want to reply to that. These are the things that we'll be working with in the n8n, Unipile, and within these platforms, we'll be using webhooks, HTTP request. I use Gemini, so I have Gemini as the AI. This can be anything that you are more inclined to use. There are switch and code nodes and Google Sheets. Google Sheets are being used here instead of databases. These repositories for users and job descriptions can come in or can be referenced in many formats. And n8n has the APIs and the connection points to be able to interact with just about anything. All right, quickly, I am going to be playing the part of the recruiter. That's me, Cesar Castro. And the person that we're trying to target or recruit their name is Merca. And sorry about this. This has my conversation that I was testing with. So we'll start a brand new conversation in that sense. 2 more items that we need to go over is there's 2 spreadsheets in this demo. The first spreadsheet, it has the list of candidates that we extracted. These are people that we're interested in because of a particular reason. So we have a spreadsheet for that. And this is the job listing. The only thing that it has is the job number that we're going to be referencing, the job descriptions, the company and status, but we're mostly concerned with the job number and the status. We are trying to provide an update back to the recruit, make sure that we provide them at least a glimpse into what's going on. This is our workflow. Pretty straightforward, so I'll go over the steps. We're listening for a message coming in through LinkedIn. We're making sure that the message is for us. This is like a double check, make sure that we are not mixing accounts. If it is indeed for us, we get the sender's information. And this is so we can capture two things that are important to us. One is the member URN. And why do I want this, right? Why am I looking for this? The primary reason is because this number is a global ID from LinkedIn, and I'm able to match this from Unipile back to a third party that may be producing this candidate list, which is my lead gen. So we got that. And the other piece that I'm trying to collect from here is the first name, because I want the messages to be nice and personal. First name. Once I have that information, I make sure that using the member, and I'll go back to the same thing. I'm trying to match this ID to what I got back from Unipile, querying the LinkedIn API. Trying to match that piece, and if there's no match, then I'll go ahead and just stop the conversation. I'm not going to do anything. If the person's actually a candidate, then it moves on to this piece, which is the AI. In this particular case, is a classification AI. So what it's trying to do, and we'll go over that here in a second. We're telling AI that it's a message classification agent, and their sole purpose is to classify incoming messages with the intent of the message. And why are we doing this? We want to get a feel of what the candidate's trying to do. We're not trying to get back to the candidate. We don't want to provide them with any information that's not the right information in regards to their resume, job, status of the process. So in this particular case, we're just trying to classify what the messages that are coming in, what exactly are they looking for. And in the flow of our conversation, we'll go over the use cases. You're either going to submit a resume, you're going to provide an update for the submitted resume, you're going to try to get information on the job or process, you're going to provide a job ID, job number, or you're going to say some random things that need to be handled separately. So that's what this prompt is doing. And if you download a template, you can go over it. And once AI is able to classify the conversation here, I'm using Gemini AI. You can change this through anything. I am passing the chat ID because I want to interact. I want to go back to that chat and make sure that I reply to the correct chat. There's some housekeeping when you have AI responding back. In some cases, it does return extra characters in the reply. So in this particular case, I'm checking if the answer is no, or if it has additional characters, I want to trim them. So that's what you have. And then I have a switch, and the switch is the one that handles the logic of how this conversation is going to go. And within the switch, I have the same use cases. And based on the use case, the flow is going to follow. I have the submit use case, and what you see here is you're submitting your resume, and I'm replying back with a big thank you. So I'm grabbing the candidate's first name and just providing a big thank you for that. The next one that I have here is the update. Pretty much the same logic, first name, and then saying if you have a job number provided, otherwise I don't have an update. And then there's the use case of a provided job number, but I'll come back to that in a second. There's two more use cases here in the flow. One is a no reply, and the other one is job info request. And these don't have a automatic reply, mostly because we really want the recruiter to either handle them or leave them alone, because it's a conversational aspect that we don't want generative AI trying to handle and provide the wrong information. Okay, coming back to the code and job number, now that we had AI classify this, there's a job number in this particular text, and we need to handle it. So it does a couple of things, but the primary thing that it does is this job number a 7-digit number. And that's what qualifies within the text a possible job ID, job number that we want to check into. And that's what we have here. And then we said, hey, if it matches this pattern, set it to true. If it doesn't, then set it to false. And that sets the logic on the switch. And if it's false, then it goes to that no code match. And let me look at that. And in this particular case, then we send out a message, we retrieve the first name, and we note that, hey, there's no match, and make sure that it's a 7-digit number with no spaces, special characters. And if you have one, but it's not in our database, then it's not. And then it moves on to the final step, which is sending out a reply. So it goes from here to here. The spreadsheet, and I may have jumped here a little bit ahead of myself, but in the job listing sheet, that's where we do that validation. If the job number in the message actually matches the job ID here, right, from that sheet, then we are going to mark this as moving on to the next step. If it doesn't, and that's something that you need to be aware of, is that if you don't have a match on the IDs, then you need to come in the settings of the spreadsheet. Otherwise, it would just end right here if there's no match and not move on to the next step. And you have to tell it to continue on error and always output data. And this is the part that where that would break. So you have that switch. It found an ID. If the ID matches the 7 digits, then it moves on to the spreadsheet, trying to find a match. If in the spreadsheet it doesn't, that ID job number does not exist, then you want it to come back to this node, which sends a message of no match. If you don't have these settings as on error continue, it will just end right here and it's not going to send a message. Okay, but since we do, it actually works. If it finds a match, then it moves on to the if statement and then it routes to the match. And let me go ahead and fix this particular piece. It needs to come to this. And that's the piece. Okay, so if it finds a match, let me go ahead and okay. If there's a match, then it's gonna go ahead and send out a message. And the message that's being sent, a job number is in our portfolio and it has status of what the status is. We do not have any information beyond that. Job openings remain an average of 30 days in our portfolio and are deleted soon after. This is all the information I can provide. Okay, so that's what we have in terms of the workflow. And this is what we have here. And this is the entire workflow. And now we can see the workflow working. So we'll go over that example here in a second. Just let me get the conversation started. One thing that I'll do actually fairly quick, and we can just go over this part, which is I'll delete this webhook, delete this webhook. And this, I'll go ahead and do this so we can just walk together through the hardest part of this particular configuration or setup, which is the connection between Unipile and n8n. So the first thing that we need to do is connect. We're going to connect LinkedIn, and the way that you do this, right? Sometimes you get that error. You just click again. And then I like to try some other way because I like to get the email primarily. Fastest way for me. So I'll go ahead and submit this. Okay, it's successful. Now I have my LinkedIn connected to my file, and now I need to set up a webhook. It's a messaging webhook. I'm going to say n8n recruiter, and then we'll put it here under test. And I'll tell you why I have test there. There's the callback URL. This is the way that Unipile can connect back to n8n, and what you find it, where you find it is here. And that goes into here. Oops. All right. So now that webhook set up, And one thing to keep in mind is that you will also then need to provide the ID, and this is the ID that you need to pass back and forth between n8n and Unipile, and for them to be able to communicate through the APIs. So that handles that piece. That's the webhook all the way back to LinkedIn. Now the areas where I do my validations is here. I need to change this. And then I also need to change this part here under account ID. Okay. Alrighty, so now all my configurations are up to date. Just keep in mind that I'm using the test URL. I'm not using the production yet. And this demo is just gonna use that test. All right, so we have the workflow configured, and now we can start the conversation. And the way that we'll start that conversation is we'll have the recruiter, that being myself, send a message back to Mert and asking if they're interested in a job position. All right, so are you available for work? Now this catches my attention, and sure I am. So my expectation is that with this particular reply, since it's not necessarily, it doesn't meet any of our criteria here, it's just general ambiguous message, I would expect it to just be routed to no reply. And this is what you'll see here. And it did that. Okay. All right. So there's no answer here on this on the chat. So let me now look at, please send me your resume. And I'm going to reply with, give me 40 minutes, 30 minutes. My expectation in this case is that there's also no reply. And it worked. All right. So 30 minutes go by, and now you got your resume ready. And what you're going to say is, here is my resume. Correct. There's my resume. Now I expect the resume submission workflow to take over, and it did. And I would expect a reply. Mary, thank you for submitting your resume. We will submit it for review and so on. Okay, so that's a match. Now I can ask, how often do you provide updates? So now asking a general question about updates. And my expectation would be that it comes down to the code update workflow. Actually, it's not asking for an update. So yeah, it handled it correctly. It's just a general question about the process. So it's not going to handle. It's not going to be routed to the updates. But can you provide me with an update? So this one should actually be routed to the update path. Which it did. Okay, perfect. And there should be an answer. Let me say, if you have a job number ID, please send it, and I will check if that job is still in our portfolio. Okay, fine. All right. So now we can start testing the job number use case. Right, job ID number that I have is, and this is not from our spreadsheet, so we'll go ahead and do this here. And this needs to be routed to the no match. And it did. And then the answer, the reply here is, the job number does not match any of our job number in our records. Please make sure that the job number, and so on. So we have that. Alrighty, but what if we have a job number that actually matches our records? And say, sorry, also sorry, I gave you the wrong job number for the update. And if you notice what I'm doing here, I'm actually including some keywords in regards to the update. I want to continue testing this under scenarios, but here is my expectation is that there's no reply. And it worked. And then I'm just gonna, here is the correct one. And again, my expectation is that there's no reply here. Done. And then I'm going to go ahead and just paste the job number and route it through the job number flow. And then here's the job number is in our portfolio. It has the status of pending. We do not have any information beyond that. Job openings remain an average of 30 days in our portfolio and are deleted soon after. This is all the information I can provide. Okay. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for the update. Talk to you soon. All right, so we're testing a little bit more what comes out of this. I would expect no reply from here. And the other thing is like, hey, I have an updated resume. It doesn't really matter at that point. Here's the resume. It's updated. But I don't necessarily want to handle that scenario either, and I would expect no reply from this case. And there you have it. So a total LinkedIn chatbot in n8n handling just the tail end of a conversation between a recruiter and a candidate. This should handle most of your use case. Like I mentioned before, it's 95% of the time. So we do have that leeway of 5%. We could make this a bit more intricate and handle more cases if we wanted to. This is pretty straightforward. I think the biggest piece that I spent on during this particular workflow is figuring out the prompt, classifying the intent of the message. It's really a way that AI excels, and it's pretty good at it, but it has to have the right examples, the right prompt. It has to have the right role. But for what it is, it's pretty straightforward. It works really well with Gemini, and Gemini is really good at classifying and sticking to rules. If you use something else like ChatGPT, I would suggest that you actually test all your proper scenarios. I do have a set of scenarios that I was going through and testing, but by far this workflow has been able to handle all of them. And if it doesn't, I just keep modifying the rules. Straightforward. Meta criteria. I may look at then using an agent in the future just to handle other types of the conversational flow. But for what it is, cost associated, and maybe applying this to a customer support chat, it will be a no-brainer, pretty straightforward to handle, especially if your process and your product's straightforward and there's not too many use cases that you want to handle at the beginning. Hope that at least one or two recruiters are able to use something like this. And I understand the workload can be heavy, but this is pretty simple and a no-brainer. The other piece that I must note, if you're handling more than just 50, 100 interactions a day with different accounts, this may work. But if you're going over 100 or so, then you really need something else in place, something else that can have a better fallback and better track of where the conversations are going, and being able to record that conversation and have it in memory, and at least like a CRM. If you plan to have a longer interaction with your clients. Right? That's it for me. Thank you.